So you're back again for some rules miss. Here we go. Welcome back. This is Jeffrey Rutledge from Officiating Born, bringing to you part 2 of our Rules Miss series. Let's get into the other rules. Another myth is the term over the back. It must be stated that the term over the back is incorrect because there is nowhere in our game of rules that suggests that the back is special or unique to rebounding or any other kind of action on the floor. The requirement for most rules is for a player to get to a particular spot legally, and once they've gotten to that spot legally, they are allowed to maintain that spot. There's also a rule called verticality, and this is the case at almost every level of rules, where a player must stay within their vertical plane from the floor all the way to the ceiling as high as they can jump. So as long as a player has not violated the principle of verticality of another player, meaning they've caused contact to violate that space, there is nothing unique about the back. Oftentimes, you will hear this from a player with inside position, which, by the way, doesn't mean anything in our rules as well, that they will have inside position and a taller player will jump and actually reach over to get the ball over them in some kind of way. It is never a foul simply because there is contact. It is only a foul if I displace you by taking away your rules or your principle of verticality. If I have taken away your principle of verticality and done so with contact which displaces you, it then can be a foul. But if all I did was out jump you or get to the ball first without displacing you, it is not a foul and never can be a foul under the rules of basketball. So understand that rules, verticality apply to a rebounding situation. And it actually doesn't matter if the person is facing them or they have their back to them or they're on the side of them. As long as I do not illegally contact you and put contact on you that displaces you, we have not created any kind of foul. Over the back is not a foul, and we should not even be saying this as officials. Okay, another myth is a term that you often hear fans or even coaches complain about is moving screen. The term moving screen never shows up in any parts of our rules sets when it comes to National Federation or the NCAA level that I'm aware of. The reason this is a myth is because screens are not legal based off of whether they're moving or not. Screens are legal or illegal based on if I'm setting them legally or illegally. Here's what I mean. If I'm setting a screen and I am moving and there is no contact, we can never have an illegal screen. If I set a screen where I'm stationary but am not within the frame of my body, whether it be my arms or my legs, that screen at the time of contact can be considered illegal and a foul on the screener. Another good example of a stationary screen that could be illegal is a blind screen. A blind screen is a screen set out of the field of vision of an opponent that does not see it coming. The requirement for a blind screen is you must give a player at least a normal step before contact. If you do not give them a normal step, you could be completely stationary and set an illegal screen. And most of all, time and distance is a factor in all screens. If I set a legal screen and I give you the proper distance, time and distance, either a step or two, based on how fast the opponent is coming, it can never be an illegal screen. But if I'm setting a screen and giving you the proper time and distance, but do not set the screen legally within my frame of my body, or the contact is caused by outside of the frame of my body, then the screen can never be illegal. This is one we should wipe out of our terminology, and unfortunately some officials use this terminology, which kind of makes it very difficult for the participants sometimes to understand what rules we are addressing. Okay, let's get into 3 seconds. This is another rules myth that is often misunderstood, often yelled for, often called for. 3 seconds is a rule that has many elements to it, and people kind of understand it that if you're in the lane for 3 seconds, that there should be a violation. But the caveat to 3 seconds is that people don't understand, and especially the lower level kids, the youth levels, when you start getting up to the higher ranks, this kind of goes away as something that they'll yell about. But you will hear a coach every now and then, even at the varsity level, complain about 3 seconds. You'll even hear a coach at the college level sometimes complain about 3 seconds. So let's get into what 3 seconds really is. First off, you must have 3 elements to even have a 3 second violation. The first one is you must be in the front court. If you're not in the front court, you can't have a 3 second violation. And what I mean by you not being in the front court, meaning the ball has to be in the front court. The second one is team control. There must be what we call team control by the team that is in control of the ball. So the team that is dribbling or passing continuously throughout that time has to have the ball in what we call team control. If you do not have team control, or you're out of bounds on a throw-in, for example, you cannot start a 3 second count. And one of the most misunderstood parts of the rule is that there's an allowance for 3 seconds for a player to make an attempt to the basket. Now, what does that mean? That basically means that if a player is in control of the ball in the lane, and that a player makes an attempt towards the basket, we are supposed to give an allowance for that player to complete that move, or to attempt to complete that move, before we violate them for 3 seconds. So what I mean is, theoretically, if a player is in the lane for 2.5 seconds and immediately they go to start going to the basket, we are to give them an allowance for completing that move, even if it takes more than the 3 seconds that they were in the lane the entire time. Once they've completed the move, if they have not shot the ball, then we resume the count from the place it was before. So a player could be in the lane, theoretically, for about 6 seconds under the right circumstance and still not committed a rules violation of 3 seconds. But oftentimes you will hear fans and even sometimes coaches will complain that they've committed a 3 second violation when the ball's being rebounded or the ball is not in their control anymore. There can never be 3 seconds if you do not have team control and it's continuous, or when after there is a shot. Again, this is one of the most misunderstood rules, especially the lower the levels, and as you get to higher levels, they usually don't complain about it as much. But as a philosophy, officials also do not call this just strictly by the pure rule as well. If a player is attempting to get out of the lane, or they are doing something where they're not trying to set up in the lane specifically, even if a toe is on the line, we give some allowances for them to attempt to get out. The bottom line is that we're not trying to call a bunch of 3 second calls during the course of a game. These are what people oftentimes call game interrupters, and sometimes it has no effect on the play. So a lot of times we're trying to call things that actually affect the game, or give a team a clear disadvantage. Okay, another rule that is widely misunderstood, or a myth, is the closely guarded rule, or what some people will understand as 5-second violation. Again, closely guarded involves several different elements in order to even have a viable count that could reach to a violation. First of all, a player must be with the ball, holding or dribbling in the front court. No violation for closely guarded can ever start, or a count can start, until the player is fully in the front court or has front court status. Now, if a player has front court status, then the other element is a defender must be within 6 feet of the ball handler. Now, when I say within 6 feet, not their arm or not some other body part, I must be within my front foot of the furthest foot closest to the defender, must be closest to the closest foot of the ball handler within 6 feet. So if I'm sticking my arm out, in other words, sticking my arm out to get closer to the defender, that's within 6 feet. That's the only thing within 6 feet. We cannot have a legal closely guarded count. It is only when the front foot of the defender to the front foot of the offensive player or the ball handler can we start a closely guarded count. Now, the time when closely guarded ends is when a player or the ball handler gets their head and shoulders past the defender going towards the basket. Then the count must stop. Or if a player or a defender breaks the plane within 6 feet and is further away, then the count also must stop. But another not thought of part of the closely guarded rule is if there is what we call an interrupted dribble, which basically means that if the ball handler accidentally loses control of a dribble, which is called an interrupted dribble, the closely guarded count must stop. So in order to have a closely guarded count, you must be within 6 feet, up to 5 seconds if you're holding the ball, up to 5 seconds if you're dribbling the ball, and then if you pick the ball up again, you have another opportunity to have a violation for 5 seconds if you're holding the ball once again. And then obviously if you pass the ball or you shoot the ball, the count ends as well. But the key is that if the ball handler gets her head and shoulders past the defender going to the basket, you can still maintain a count, which could lead to a 5-second or closely guarded violation. But one of the biggest caveats to this rule is this rule is not the same at all levels. The National Federation has closely guarded for a hold or a dribble. The NCAA men's and the NCAA women's has no violation for a dribble anytime in the front court. Part of the reason that may be is because, plain and simple, NCAA rules have a shot clock. So the shot clock is at play, so there's no real need to have a 5-second or closely guarded count. Okay, another well misunderstood rule is kicking violations. Kicking violations are misunderstood because anytime that somebody or a ball player puts their foot to the ball or puts their leg to the ball, we assume that there must be a kicking violation. This is wildly incorrect. First of all, kicking violation of any kind must be an intentional act. You must use any part of your leg, including your upper part of your leg to your lower part of your leg to your foot, to purposely kick or contact the basketball in order to have a violation. One of the other myths about this is that people think that this violation only applies or mostly applies to the defense. Kicking the ball by offense or defense is still a violation and should be called accordingly. Even if you do not technically kick the ball, but you use your leg in a way to direct or to control the basketball in any kind of way, you've committed a kicking violation. I will often sometimes see in scrums or when the ball's on the floor, a player trying to gather the ball with their feet. That would be considered a kicking violation. Now, if a pass or the ball ricochets and goes off somebody's leg and they were not making an attempt to kick the ball, then it would not be a kicking violation. But that is when you oftentimes hear people out of the stands or a coach will claim they kicked the ball if a ball handler or a passer throws the ball off the foot or leg of a defender, and they'll say that's a kicking violation. Even when the defender made no such motion or was not attempting to stop, control, or block the ball in any kind of way. Thank you for watching part 2 of the Rules Miss series. More Rules Miss coming up. And remember, don't forget to comment below. Don't forget to like the video since you've watched it all the way to the end. Don't forget to hit the bell to get updates on new videos. And most of all, subscribe to the channel.